I never really meant to leave, but at some point you just don't really feel like you belong. Recently, my family and I went to a wedding in northern Wisconsin, and seeing my Spanish wife take in this part of the US made me realize and appreciate just how unique and awesome the US can actually be. But now, as a young parent trying to future-proof and prepare my family, there are some things that I just started to realize. As someone who spent the better part of the last decade living in Europe, now there are things that I just see as normal, which my American family and friends are still having to deal with on a daily basis. Living in Europe and traveling to Europe are two very different things. So today I want to talk about some of the specific things that I've noticed at my time as an American living in Europe. The first and probably the most important thing for me right now at this point in my life is that in Europe, young parents and young families are taken care of by the government. My son was born in Germany, and my wife, who is from Spain, worked for a German company. When we had our child, she got 1 full year of maternity, a full year, which is unheard of in the US. And not only was this time paid, and not only was this time secured in terms of her coming back to the job, we were able to go and do whatever we wanted. So we used this time to travel. And this travel, this maternity leave travel that we did to Korea, Japan, Sri Lanka, London, this was fundamental to not only who we are as parents and people, but it also set a foundation for the type of child and the type of family we want to raise. This was massively important for us as parents. And there are certain things day to day that you just do without thinking, like go to the hospital when you're sick. In the US growing up, you used to avoid going to the hospital because you didn't want to get hit with a crazy bill. And I still have friends that are getting hit with crazy bills. It's not like you have the best insurance and everything goes away. In Europe, it doesn't happen. If you're on a plan, you can go to the hospital and not have to worry about getting hit with anything crazy. It's just part of the plan, and it makes sense. Once our son started going to daycare in Spain, he started getting sick all the time. And once he got sick, as parents who are freaking out because it's our first time doing this, we needed help. We needed someone to support us. So we went to the hospital and they helped us. They gave us medication. They told us what was going on. We went to the pharmacy. It was, if not free, a couple of euros, and we went home. That was it. No invoice, nothing in the mail to freak us out. We just got treatment, got help, and that was it. Feels like that's the way that it should be. In general, family just feels more important in Europe. It feels like we're taken care of and the corporations aren't prioritized over the individuals, which is a really nice feeling. Aside from the maternity and the paternity leaves that you get by law from the companies that you work for, you also have support in case a company or your employer wrongs you in any way, or if your landlord wrongs you in any way. There are services that will help you out and they will get you your justice. This is an amazing feeling, just knowing that you're supported basically in every aspect of your life in Europe. Another thing that I noticed living in Europe is that ambition feels very different than it did when I was living in the US. You probably have heard all the time that people in the US live to work while people in Europe work to live, and this is pretty real. In the US, I would say the work-life balance is like 70 to 30. In Europe, I would say it's closer to 50-50. And that extra 20%, it doesn't just disappear, it just turns into something else. It turns into longer dinners. It turns into more time chilling with the family. It turns into more conversations or chilling at the park with your friends. It just turns into presence rather than efficiency. If you're someone that's ambitious and you have projects and companies and businesses and you're entrepreneurial, things that you want to start and push forward, the reality is that things are going to go a bit slower. You're not going to be able to have that push or that efficiency that you might have had in the US. And it just kind of happens. Even if you are intentional about working more, about focusing, you can do it, but things are just going to move a little bit slower. And a lot of this is because you're just busy enjoying life. Things are a bit slower. You're going to have longer dinners. You're going to have longer walks where you're just chilling. You're going to have more time or feel like you should be spending more time with your family, which are all amazing things. You're going to have a lot of friends that are from different places. So when you do hang out, you sort of adapt that speed. And ultimately, when you go back to the US and see the other side of people rushing to eat and going back to work, or rushing through whatever they're doing so that they can get back to the next thing and move forward and forward and forward. Europe has taught me that that isn't necessarily the path to a happy life. Another big difference between the US and Europe is that walkable neighborhoods are a thing, and it changes your life. And I'm not being dramatic. It really changes how you function, how you feel, how you think as not only an adult, but especially as a parent. Living in Germany and Spain, I've always been able to live in places where there are walkable neighborhoods basically everywhere. You can go outside and go for a walk, and you're going to run into a park, you're going to run into a cute little store, you're going to see people that are also walking, you're going to see activity, you're going to see life, and you're going to feel like it's normal. In the US, if you go outside for a walk, you're probably going to be hit with cracked pavements, zero people, and big loud streets that just make it very uncomfortable for you to cross the road or feel any sort of peace or relaxation. As I'm recording this right now, my son, my wife, and I are spending time in California with my parents. And it's shocking how unwalkable these neighborhoods really are. Even in the Bay Area, which is where we are now, which is more walkable than a lot of places, you still don't feel comfortable just going outside and taking a left and seeing what happens. All those daily walks that you have to do as a parent are just a little bit more difficult here. They don't feel very nice. To get out of the house, you're taking a very specific path, or even worse, which is just weird, is getting into the car to go take a walk. It just shouldn't be that way. The walks that I take in Europe are massively important to my mental well-being. It helps me get some space, it helps me breathe, it helps me think, and ultimately helps my kid get some rest as well. I think if your daily walks aren't stimulating, if they aren't giving you energy, if you're not seeing or feeling the things that you need to feel so that you can go home, go back to work feeling recharged and ready, then that's a problem. And I've never had this problem living in Europe. In the US, yeah, it's an issue. Big one that I've noticed living in Europe is that money in general just isn't as important as it is in the US. In the US, you have to have money to live a certain level of life. In order to have access to certain types of food, certain restaurants, certain places, you have to make a certain amount of money. So the working to live is the reality. In Europe, even if you're making a ton of money compared to someone who's making very little money, you're probably living a very similar day-to-day lifestyle. You're both probably walking outside of your apartment and going to the local cafe and having an €8 lunch. And you're not doing it because that's the cheap option, you're doing it because it's delicious. I've also noticed as a parent looking for things to do in Europe and looking for things to do in the US that Europe has way more free things available. You've got kids cafes, you have playgrounds that aren't sketchy, you have events and meetups that are happening all the time. You get to have more activity, more socializing, and enjoying your day-to-day life. As an American, making money and earning as much as you can was sort of the name of the game. You have to do that because that's just what you do. In Europe, you can make a certain amount of money and people are like, great, now go live your life. And you really feel that. You really have this motivation to work less. Not necessarily work less, but just balance your life a little bit better. And as a parent, this is all I want to do. I want to have this balance where I'm able to spend time with my family, be there for my kid as he grows up, and be able to watch every moment and still work on my projects and make things happen. And I feel like that balance is just way more attainable and way more normal in Europe. Of course, money is always going to matter everywhere, but in Europe, it just doesn't matter as much, and you can feel it, and it's nice. Another big thing I noticed living in Europe versus living in the US is that your place in the family sort of disappears. You become that person that lives in Europe. You're not going to know what's going on with your cousins or your uncles or your grandparents. You're going to get filled in later, but you're not going to actively know really what's happening. At the wedding in Wisconsin, I got to see my grandpa for the first time in probably 12 years. He has neuropathy in his legs, so he can't fly. He wasn't able to go to our wedding, so he hasn't seen me really as an adult. He especially hasn't seen me since I had a kid. So the first time having him meet his great-grandson, it was pretty special, and I realized that it's something that probably would have happened a lot sooner if I was still living in the US. As I'm getting older and the family members in my life are also getting older, I start to realize that these opportunities and these moments aren't just going to be there at any time anymore. These windows are closing pretty quickly. And even when you are around family, it feels different. It feels kind of hollow. because you're apart for so long that there's not really a time to catch up on specifics. You're catching up on big picture things. When you don't see a family member for so long, they kind of become strangers in a sad way. There is a level of selfishness involved when you decide to move to Europe, or at least to leave the US. You're basically saying that my family, my little family, is more important or more a priority than the big family, than me being a part of everything else that's going on. And for me, that was a sacrifice that I was willing to make for myself and for my wife and my son so that we can enjoy our life. But I realized in these situations, going to the wedding and seeing my aunts and great aunts and my grandma, my cousins, that I'm missing out on a lot. Life in Europe is just simpler. You live a simpler, richer life where it's less focused on things like money and career and more focused on time and peace and family. The systems work. You feel more supported as a human, as an individual. You don't feel like corporations are taking everything from you. You actually feel like there is transparency. You feel like things are based in reality. Everything doesn't have to be flashy. Everything doesn't have to be ostentatious and big and grand. It can just be normal, and normal isn't a bad thing. The best upgrades in your quality of life are the things that you don't notice. Now, do I miss things? Of course. On the lower impact side, I miss watching NBA games live. I miss tacos. And on the heavy impact things, there's things that I miss, like being able to have conversations with people, or feeling like I can just chat and flow no matter what, or no matter who, or no matter where someone is from in the US. I love the life that I'm building with my family. I love living in Europe, and I also love and appreciate the life that I have in the US. I love visiting my parents in the US, but not enough to give up the quality of life that I found in Europe. I really don't give a shit about GDP or the powerhouse that my country should be. I just care about living a nice life, and I care about having a family that feels comfortable and safe and that we can all grow together. So if you're considering leaving the US, moving to Europe or somewhere else, you're gonna have to accept a new normal. What's normal in the US isn't normal everywhere else, and that's the beautiful part about it. If you want to explore it, I highly recommend it because it's satisfying in a way that I really can't explain.